How's it going, YouTube? Today is a very special day. We have 2 engaged and 3 multi-role. I'm very excited to be able to bring you this video. It's taken me a little bit. I've had a lot of allergies, which has been unfortunate. I was stuck in Philly, but that means that I've had a lot of time to really be able to decide what I want to do with the different lists that I have. I have 1 going first and 2 going second to show you today, going over some tech options, going over different things that you can do with the deck. If you do want a refresher course on Striker, definitely let me know down in the comments below and I can get working on that. If you haven't already checked out my sponsors or Imperial Duelist or Dragon Shield Gem or Sleeve Chief, definitely go ahead and check them all out. And if you haven't already looked at my mat over at Imperial Duelist, definitely do that as well. Directly support the channel with that. I really appreciate it. We're also almost at 20,000 subscribers. I'll be doing one of the biggest giveaways I've ever seen, and at least one of the biggest giveaways this channel has ever seen. And I really want to be able to do that. So let's hit that goal of 20,000 subscribers because we're on our way and it's coming soon and I cannot be more excited. Without further ado, let's hop right into our first topic. The first thing I want to do is just quickly go over the Linkage OTK again, just for anyone who forgot. Normal summon Ray, attack with Ray, and then you go Ray effect into Hayate, attack directly, send Rose, linkage into Kagari, add back linkage, attack for 25, because now you'll have both names engraved. Then linkage into Shizuku, and you'll be able to swing for the last bit of the 8,000 damage, which is really cool against an open board. Striker has a very unique opportunity to go ahead and break any board for the most part, and then just go ahead and do the linkage OTK now, which is really nice. There's a lot of different things that you can do with Striker, which I think is really cool, just because of the fact that the deck is not very linear by any means. So if you're just now picking up the deck for the first time, don't get frustrated if you don't understand the deck right away, because it's really a lot to learn, and it's probably one of the most high ceiling decks in the game. But the next thing I want to answer is something that I get a lot of questions about, and do you run Prosperity or Desires? I think if you're going first, it's really important to run Prosperity because you really want to be able to see Engine, you want to see There Can Be Only One, you want to see anything that you need to make sure that your first turn board is going to be the best that it possibly can be. But I really like Desires for going second, being able to draw 2, see all of your options at one time. It's really nice, especially now that we have 2 engage. I was still activating Desires even with 1 engage, I never really cared, but the fact that now you have a less chance of just banishing both is really cool. I think Desires overall is my personal pick because usually I'm going second with Striker, but I do think that if I decided to go first, I'd probably be on Prosperity. I still don't love Prosperity in this deck, but I do think that it's pretty important if you're going first. You just really want to make sure that you're seeing Engine. So the next thing though is Morganite. Now this card's really cool. This is something that we saw a lot in like Trap Tricks or Fluanderies. I think that there's a lot of merit running this card in Striker just because the grind game is just every game. So this is something that does allow you to draw 2 every time, and then being able to additional normal summon an ace monster can come in handy as well, because if your Ray gets negated and you don't really have a way to another ace monster, you're not reliant on something like Linkage, you can go ahead and just normal summon a Rose or a Ray again. So I think that's really cool, and again, just for the grind game alone, I think this card is something that could come up. I really wanted to run it in like the adventure build, but you can't activate Griffin under this, which is really unfortunate. Like, yeah, you can use Griffin, then this, but then at the same time, if you get to Griffin again, then it's dead. You could always like pitch Enchantress to the graveyard and use it from the grave so it plays around Morganite, but at the same time, it just doesn't really seem plausible. So I don't know, let me know what you think about Morganite down in the comments below, because I think this could actually be a really cool tech card in Striker, but we'll have to see. The next card here is going to be Typhoon. I've heard a lot of people talking about this, and I've had a lot of questions about this. I don't really think that I would ever run this, at least not right now. It's not an IO format, right? That card's banned. Still an anti-spell, though. I think that this was particularly necessary for IO, because if you top deck anything later on, then it's pretty much useless. But at the same time, this is a card that's cool, and I talked about it last format in the sense that if your opponent goes Prodigy, activate Monk, activate Peacemaker, you could Typhoon the Peacemaker, or if they go Race Soul, activate Birth, then you can snipe the Birth. So I thought that was really cool, just like a pseudo hand trap. But overall, I think this card might be a bit more cope. I think that if you're playing against like an anti-spell board, most of the time, your opponent's going to flip it, and then they'll have like other negates down anyway. So playing this doesn't really solve too many things. I think that I'll end up being on Cosmic if we see a heavy resurgence in Runic, just because of course you want to be able to shut down the fountain. But I don't think that Typhoon would be the answer. I think it's definitely still just Cosmic Cyclone, because it's also just a lot better for utility overall. But Typhoon, definitely still a really cool card, a really old Striker card that people used to use all the time. So definitely not like a weird tech option. It's something that you could definitely play, but it's not something that I particularly see myself playing either. So just to kind of talk about the first list here, this is an Adventure Striker build. I think this is particularly really cool because you're playing cards like Fusion Destiny to go into DPE, which is still really good, especially against your worst matchup, which is probably Labyrinth. And it just gives you another monster that's just really hard to out, right? Because it keeps coming back. I think Prosperity is really necessary in a build like this though, because you really want to be able to see your Brave engine or their Chameleon one, you want to see Fusion Destiny, you want to see your Striker engine. So it just gives you another way to be able to bridge into a lot of the different ways that your deck can play. I think adding more points of interaction in a deck like this is really nice, because if your opponent ashes Prosperity, then you're just like, okay, cool, activate Engage, can't get ashed. So definitely a lot of different things that you can do as far as multiple points of interaction. It also makes siding a bit more awkward because a lot of times people are not really sure what to side. That happened a lot when I was playing my 60 card list, where people would like want to side in back row removal, but then I had like Griffin, DPE, Shizuku, and I thought that was really funny because at that point you might have like one set and it might be like their Chameleon one, and then it's just like really awkward because your opponent just has cards that are relatively dead against the board. The other thing you'll see here is going to be Chaos Angel. I think it's really solid if you like steal something that you can go into Chaos Angel with, because you have Ray and Rose, both light and dark. You have the option to side into Bestials, which again, a Bestial with Rose is just an immediate Chaos Angel in the EMZ, protected by things like Widow Anchor, which is even crazier because the decks that have a hard time dealing with this card are going to have a harder time dealing with this card. So I think that's really cool. The other thing that someone brought up in stream yesterday that I thought was really funny was that if your opponent banishes the DPE and you still have to resolve the effect to summon, you summon back Dasher, which is a dark level 6, then you can summon a Rose and then threaten Chaos Angel that way. So definitely a lot of different things that you can do, which I think are really cool. Siding Bell is probably just really important just for the lab matchup or even branded. I don't really think that I'm worried about getting Bestialed on Ray. A lot of people were like, but what happens if you get Bestialed on Ray? And I'm like, it's fine. Like, we have other things that we can do in the deck. I don't know. It doesn't really scare me that that's like a possibility, right? You should always be ending on like Engage in hand and like other ways to Ray and whatnot. So there should never be a situation where you're just like outright dying to a Bestial. It's just never realistic to me, at least. But otherwise than that, you'll see that we have Thrust on the side. I really don't like Thrust in Striker. I just don't. Unless you're playing against a combo deck and you know that you're going second, then I would side it in, because at that point, that's something that I think is going to be a lot better into a crazy board. But there's a lot of situations where you'll have in Thrust, they'll do something, and then you have to set like right or Engage, and you don't really want to set those. You want to be able to use them. That's why I like Tactics a lot more. I think that it's just overall a better choice. Again, most of the time you're just able to like draw 2 so you can get into more Striker cards. You can go ahead and steal something to make that Chaos Angel more alive, or to like Link climb out of it. You can at least look at hand if you have like another like Floodgate or a hand trap. So it's just overall very versatile in the deck, and I like that a lot more. But most of my list you'll see here just won't be main decking Thrust. It's always going to be siding it. I get that question a lot, like why I don't like it so much, but I liked it a lot in like MathMech because you could set Super Factorial regardless of whatever happened, and that card's just broken because they'll like hand trap Alan Bershin or like Circular, and then you'll set Super Factorial anyway, and they're like, wow, I'm dead, and you're like, yep. So I don't really think there's a card in Striker like that you can just like set and be like, haha, I win. But like you could always have like D barrier or what have you, but I don't even think D barrier is like that nuts right now. So I don't know, take it with a grain of salt, but I think that Thrust in the sideboard is a lot better in Striker than it would be in the main deck. Overall, Adventure Striker, I think it's really cool, especially with DPE. I cut the Illusion Souls for Prosperity. I just like those a little bit more. Being able to get into their Chameleon one is very reminiscent of when we got DPE, like the type of build that we would see. Just no Verte. But I still think it's fine though. A lot of different things you can do. But moving into the next one here though, this is one that I would personally run. I think this is going to be one of the builds, if not the build for me. I still like Droplet in the main deck. I think this card is absolutely phenomenal. This is a going second build. I know that Kashtira is still around, but I think that not using Droplet in Striker is just doing a disservice to yourself. This card is fantastic, and the ways that you can interact with your opponent with Droplet is crazy. Being able to use Droplet to send a Striker spell to the graveyard so it can resolve as 3 spells being in the graveyard is always going to be one of the craziest things that you can do. Having the 2 multi-roll, 2 engage, definitely a huge step up. I'm siding to their Chameleon one. This is if you know that you want to go first, or even if you're playing against a deck like Sword Soul, you still side them in, because at that point when you break the board, you set their Chameleon one and they can't play the game because their follow-up is going to be very minimal. So at that point when you set their Chameleon one, it's just a blowout completely. I do like Nibiru in the side still because, again, undefined format, we don't really know what's going on yet, so definitely important to make sure that you still have that around. Having the Book of Eclipse, the Imperm, the Anchors, the Burners, like there's so many cards to respect the one of a Rise Heart now, so I don't think that it's a problem to run Droplet as well, because if you do end up playing against Kashtira, then yeah, you can just go ahead and side out the Droplet, that's fine. But at the same point, I think that playing Droplet is going to be the most important. I love this card in this deck. You can play Chalice instead if you want, just because you might be a little bit more weary about playing against Cash and having Droplet in your deck. But at the same point, I think that it's almost necessary to play this card in Striker. And I don't see myself cutting it anytime soon, to be completely honest with you. I think it's very good. Again, main decking 2 Tactics and siding 3 Thrust, when I know that I'm going second into a situation where the Thrust will be live, especially against like Kashtira, of course, that's when this card will absolutely be coming in. But for now, I think Thrust stays in the sideboard. But I did make a list with Thrust in the main deck just in case you wanted to go ahead and use it. I know that a lot of people are kind of like, well, I still want it in the main deck. So this is a build with it in the main. I decided the Eclipse. I'm siding the 2 Lightning Storm. I'm still siding that there can be only one. I think that's still important. Then this build definitely has a few more hand traps. You have the Ash, the Imperm, the Veiler, and Bishul's on the main deck, which I think is really cool just because you have a really good time against a lot of different rogue matchups, even branded. So then you also have the option to go into things like Chaos Angel. I think that it's just another build to try out that I think would be really cool. Main decking the 3 Thrust and the 2 Tactics. I really like Tactics alone in this deck. I think that it's just like one of the best decks to use it in overall. But this is definitely going to be one of 2 of the builds that I would play for the new format so far, just because I want to make sure that if you're going to be in a format where no one really knows what they're doing yet, and the format is very undefined, that you play a deck that just is as generic as possible. And that's what I would get out of a build like this. Just because I'm not main decking the Thrust, is still in the sideboards for if I play against something like more combo-centric. I'm playing Book of Eclipse because it's overall very good generically. I like Eclipse more than Book of Moon right now because it does flip the monster's phase up, so that gives you a chance to at least anchor them on your turn, which is really nice too, or Burner. And then you also have cards like Droplet, again, very generically good against a lot of situations. I'm on Underworld Goddess because, again, there's a lot of situations where your opponent could have like a Towers. That's been pretty common lately. So just trying to be as generic as possible right now, and then as the format shapes up, the Striker build will definitely adapt. But for now, this is what we really have to work with. And I think that any one of these would be fine to run at a tournament tomorrow. I do like this build the most, but I think this is definitely something that you could do as well. I think it's kind of cool. Again, with the Bishul's, threatening Chaos Angel is crazy. Just because you can leave it in the EMZ, and then it's just something that your opponent has to stare at, which is kind of funny. And then it's protected by things like Widow Anchors, so really hard to out. But I do hope that everyone enjoys today's video, and if you have any questions, let me know down in the comments below. If you want to check out my Discord, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, or my Metafy page, definitely go ahead and check all those out down in the description below. And without further ado, I hope that everyone has a wonderful night, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you.